Well, the first is we did have the moratorium, and the moratorium had a serious impact on our revenue stream. As you know, it's about $2 to $3 million. Now it's up to about $4 million a year of expected annual increases based on just what you, Anita, and I pay in our property taxes. And the moratorium had a big impact. The first tax increase I put forward. The second tax increase I did not put forward. It was put forward by the Board of Aldermen because I had proposed those position cuts in the government. And that's an important part of the 7 steps. You know, we are going to have to reduce spending. It was not popular to make those cuts, and it was not easy to talk to those people face to face and say, your position's not in the budget next year.
It's going to be more unpopular in the next 2 years.
Well, it's going to be more unpopular, but even more necessary. And I think that's the thing that people are going to struggle with. No one wants to be the one to deliver the bad news. But
no one wants to fire anyone.
No one wants to fire anyone,
especially when it's due to money.
But think of it this way: you're going to end up with, let's say, 400 employees going on a 32-hour work week. You're going to have 400 employees with sour grapes, or are you going to cut 20 or 30 positions out of the budget? I mean, that I think is a very difficult decision and a very difficult philosophical question that we're going to have to address. You know, I think I'd rather look at the budget, reduce the spending right now. There are obviously about $1 million of cuts remaining on the table from when I examined the budget that was passed. You know, simple things like the mayor has a vehicle allowance, and it had always been from Grimes' time through this year, but $6,000 a year. It went up to $10,000 this year.
In the city?
Yeah, there's always been a vehicle allowance for the mayor.
So you know, obviously you can reduce that. I had suggested additionally, are you going to be all right?
Take the bus.
Well, I had suggested originally that that the mayor and board of aldermen, while I think they deserve the salary increases they voted on, Anita is leaving us due to choking.
She gets some water.
That they phase in the salary increases over the course of the next couple of years. At the very least, not this year. I mean, it's political tone deafness to say, you know, we deserve this year. And
they should at least a minimum postpone it for a year, then evaluate it at that time.
And I'll bring that to the Board of Aldermen if I'm successful in this election, because I think you should just make the point that we're in this with you. And you phase it in over 4 years. They deserve it. The aldermen deserve it. You know how hard they work.
Sure.
And I know how hard the mayor works. It's not that the positions aren't worth it. It's just that you don't do it in a year like this.
Well, and you know, unless you've owned and I've only gotten experience for a little over 2 years, until you own and operate your own business, you don't realize what it is to have to do what you have to do to keep your business going. And, you know, sure, I like to keep everybody employed, like to give them a rate, but if there's not a business, then no one's employed.
Right. And, you know, so the difficulty is, you know, how can we rely on you, Jennifer, to not raise taxes? Well, you know, when I ran 8 years ago, I put out a list of 10 items that I was going to work on. And if you look at that list, it was Carroll Creek, it was hire additional police officers. We did those things. And this 7 steps, if we do all of these things, we will be able to reduce property taxes, particularly because we're going to see economic development. You're not going to see MedImmune expand here or BP Solar expand here if people like Richard Griffin, who we hired as the Director of Economic Development, don't work on these initiatives. One of the
BP Solar took out jobs.
BP Solar took out jobs in the last few years, which is why I've proposed this idea to get off the grid. Get off the grid allows the city to partner with maybe BP Solar, but a renewable energy provider to work on a project that dedicates public land for alternative energy sources to run city facilities. I've been talking about this for about 2 years, and it turns out that on the Eastern Shore, one of the state colleges has actually done this. They've taken their whole campus off the grid for no money because they partnered with a company like BP Solar to put in the work, so put in the infrastructure. This is something that the city can work on, and it will ultimately be a money saver for us. The other simple thing is the homestead property tax credit. And this was a great debate that we had. As you recall, the homestead property tax credit cap was 10% when I was in. And in my third year, it was recommended by Alderman Lenhart that it be reduced to 5%. We had a big debate over it.
Oh, yeah.
And I opposed it because they didn't suggest spending cuts to go along with it. And pretty much the only time David Lenhart said he trusted me was said, well, we trust you to make the cuts. So the homestead property tax credit reduction to 5% passed by a 3-2 vote, and I signed it. I have fewer vetoes than most people might imagine. I accepted the work of the alderman and made the spending reductions. Because we did that, maybe this is the wisdom coming through, I know that we can do it again, ratchet it back from 5% to 3%, meaning that the rate of increase for every homeowner is 3%. It could only go up. And that's assuming our property values start going back up again.
That's a big assumption now.
Well, they will, obviously.
They will at some point.
And that's the important thing. In these years that you're flush, when revenue's flowing in at 10%, capped at 10%, nobody was really noticing it. But these really tight years, when we see our home assessments go up for no apparent reason, we're still capped at 5%. If we ratchet that back, I think people will start to believe that the city government can control its spending. Now, obviously, one of the big things that's going to come is how can you afford all the people that are in city government? You might have been able to do it if during this term, they did do a 6% COLA one year, 6% salary adjustment plus COLA, which netted out to about a 9% salary increase. I think it was their second year. And Anita, and Blaine, from doing city budgets, that just starts adding up. It's an exponential increase.
Keeps on going.
So, we can't ratchet everybody back 10%, and we can't furlough everybody.
At this point in time, people should be thankful they have any job with benefits.
Well, that's true, but if you keep everybody you have, I don't think you're making the right decisions for the city.
You can't justify because, just look at planning. If people aren't building houses, how can you justify
planning, permits?
Everybody in planning permits or whatever?
GIS is an example.
We need to take a quick break. All right, we're going to take a quick break talking with Jennifer Dougherty, Democrat running for mayor.